It started with the kind of night that never looks dangerous from the outside. A ballroom with lukewarm chicken, a keynote that ran long, a badge that kept flipping backward on its lanyard, and a hotel bar that smelled like citrus and spilled gin. Our regional sales summit was in Nashville, the kind of work hard, play hard trip where the company pretends the open bar is a reward, and we pretend we're not going to regret it in the morning. I was 6 weeks from my wedding to Mark, the man everyone said was perfect for me because he was steady, patient, and kind. I knew that. I loved that. I also told myself I deserved one last trip where I could be the fun version of me without worrying about menu colors and seating charts. The coworker was Evan. He worked 2 rows over from me in the office, funny in a dry way, quick with numbers, forever rolling up his sleeves even when the room was cold. We'd never crossed a line. We'd bantered in the elevator, traded Spotify playlists, and once split an Uber when the trains were down. That was it. At least, that's what I told myself. There were signs I didn't want to see. The way we drifted toward each other at group lunches. The way his eyes lingered when I talked about Mark like he was a convenient detail in a story that was really about me. The way my chest lifted a little when his name showed up in my inbox. It was all harmless until it wasn't. After the keynote, our team poured into the lobby bar like marbles out of a jar. Someone yelled shots, and I did the thing I always do when I'm trying to prove I can keep up. I said yes before I checked in with myself. Tequila. Then a Paloma. Then a bourbon because the bartender said it was local, and I didn't want to be the one who turned down the Nashville experience. Evan took the stool next to mine. He bumped my shoulder with his and said, "You crushed your deck today," and I laughed louder than the compliment deserved. We talked about nothing for hours. Office jokes, the worst client, a story about his dog that I could not retell now if my life depended on it, only that it made me touch his forearm in that thoughtless, dangerous way. Around midnight, the crowd thinned. Someone yelled goodnight, someone else disappeared toward the elevators with a hand entwined in a hand that was not their spouse's, and the bartender announced last call. I knew I should go up. I could feel the point where fun tilts into stupid. I said, "I should go," and slid off the stool. He stood up too. "I'll walk you to the elevators," he said, like we were in a movie where nothing bad happens because the soundtrack is still light. The elevator doors were silver and too bright. We stood there with our badges and our stupid drink bracelets, and that weird hush hotel carpets create at night. When the doors opened, we stepped in alone. I pressed 14, he pressed 9, and we both watched the numbers climb. It could have ended there. It should have ended there. At floor 9 the doors opened. He didn't move. He looked at me, then at the glowing 14, then back at me. I heard my voice say, "Nashville has you acting different," and I meant it as a joke, but it opened a door I had been pretending wasn't there. He said, "You're getting married," and I said, "I know," and then I kissed him first. That's the part that I keep wanting to rewrite. I want to say it was a stumble, a slip, a misunderstanding. It wasn't. I leaned forward and made a choice. When the doors slid open at 14, we were already holding hands. We didn't even make it to my room at first. We kissed like teenagers against the wall at the end of the hall, messy and too eager. Then we were inside, and the room smelled like hotel soap and cold air. I remember the sound of my badge hitting the desk, the awkwardness of shoes half off, the breathless way he said my name like it was a secret. I also remember the way a voice in my head kept trying to cut through the noise, saying Mark, 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 and how I kept turning the volume down. We were drunk, but not so gone that we didn't know what we were doing. It wasn't a mistake without agency. It was a bad decision made on purpose because I liked how it felt to be wanted in a new room by a new person, and I told myself it didn't count because the city was far away and the hotel would forget me. When it was over, he put his forehead to mine and said, "We should pretend this never happened." And the worst part is I nodded like that was a plan you can just choose and stick to. He left quietly. I locked the door and took the world's longest shower because I thought hot water could rinse off choices. In the morning my head pounded, and my phone was a mess of group texts about breakfast and bus call times. Evan sent one message, "We're good." I typed "We're good" back, and then I deleted our thread like that could save me. I presented in a breakout session with a smile that hurt my face. I laughed at jokes. I acted like nothing had shifted under my feet. That afternoon, my manager asked if I'd be okay to take the late flight back, because they needed someone to ride herd on a client dinner. I said yes because saying no felt like admitting I needed to be saved from myself. On the plane home, I scrolled through photos of floral centerpieces and saved videos of aisle decor, because that seemed like a normal thing a bride does. When I landed, Mark was waiting at baggage claim with a coffee and that soft look he gets when he sees me in a crowd. He said, "You're glowing." And my stomach flipped because I was, but not for the right reason. In the car he asked about the trip, and I told him boring stories on purpose. He kissed my hand at a red light, and I had to look out the window so I wouldn't cry. We got married 3 weekends later in a little garden behind a restaurant we love. The sky was a perfect soap bubble blue, the vows were simple, and people said our first dance song made them tear up. Mark squeezed my fingers during the ceremony when I stumbled on a word and whispered, "We're fine," and everyone clapped like love fixes everything. I told myself I would take the secret with me like a pebble in a shoe. It would annoy me, but I could walk, and that's what mattered. I didn't tell my maid of honor. I didn't confess to a priest. I didn't write it in a journal. I put it in a mental drawer labeled never, and shut it so hard the frame rattled. The first months of marriage were both sweet and bland in the way everyone forgets to tell you about. We returned the last of the duplicate mixers. We wrote thank you notes. We argued about a shelf and then laughed because arguing about a shelf is a cliché. Sometimes late at night, my brain would spin. I'd picture the hotel hallway, and the way the elevator lights reflected off polished brass, and the way my badge felt heavy around my neck. I'd press my cheek into Mark's back and mumble, "I love you," too often too soft, like I was trying to drown out static. I kept waiting for the universe to bring the hammer down. It didn't. Not right away. Evan and I avoided each other like we'd both been told the other carried a sickness. He asked to move to a different account. I volunteered for West Coast hours. When we did cross paths in meetings, we were painfully polite, like coworkers who once had a shared printer but never spoke. I felt a mix of relief and resentment. Relief that he wasn't trying to pull me back, resentment that he got to be a ghost while I had to carry the weight of making our life look normal. Then 3 months after the wedding, the hammer finally dropped. Not from the sky, but from a quiet source I didn't see coming, his wife. Her name was Hannah. She emailed me from a new account with a subject line that looked like spam. "We should talk." The body of the email was only 3 sentences long. She said she had seen messages between me and Evan on his Apple Watch backups. She said she knew it happened in Nashville. She said I had until the end of the weekend to tell Mark myself, or she would. My heart beat so hard I could hear it in my ears. My first instinct was to deny. My second was to delete. My third was to imagine writing back and trying to woman our way through it, but there was no way through because the truth was a wall, and I was the one who built it. I closed my laptop, walked into the kitchen where Mark was making eggs, and asked him if he wanted sourdough or wheat. I did not tell him. That day we went to a farmer's market and bought peaches. I stood there holding a paper bag of fruit, and felt like a thief. Hannah didn't wait for the weekend. She texted Mark on Monday morning while he was at his desk, a number he didn't recognize, with screenshots. She didn't use insults. She didn't threaten. She just wrote, "I thought you should know why your wife and I can't sleep." He called me from the office and said, "Come home," in a voice I had never heard from him, flat and small and careful. When I walked into our apartment, he was sitting at the dining table with his phone face down, and our wedding album open to a picture of us laughing with cake on our noses. He turned the album around like a lawyer submitting an exhibit, and asked me if I wanted to say something before he showed me anything. I said, "I made a mistake," and even as the words left my mouth I hated them for how light they sounded. He flipped the phone and there I was in a blurry bar mirror, Evan behind me, his hand on my waist. Not pornographic, not explicit, just damning. There was a timestamp and a location tag from some automatic setting that I didn't remember turning on. There was also a thread of messages, the ones I thought I had deleted, living on in some cloud. The words were good. "We can't do this again," and a heart I don't remember sending. Mark didn't yell. He asked me to tell him everything, and the worst part is that for a second I considered trimming the truth to make it easier to swallow. I didn't. I told him the bar, the elevator, the hallway. I told him it was only once. I told him I was drunk but not so drunk that I couldn't make a choice. I told him I thought burying it would protect him. That's the sentence that broke him. He leaned back, stared at the ceiling and said, "You didn't protect me. You stole my right to know the truth about the day I married you." He packed in 30 minutes with the kind of calm that looks like disaster in slow motion. Jeans. 2 t-shirts. His running shoes. He took the old hoodie I steal when I'm cold and didn't look at me when I said, "Please don't take that one," because even in that moment I was still making it about me. He didn't slam the door. He shut it the way he does everything, with care. He texted me 2 hours later a list of logistics. He'd stay at his brother's, he'd come by when I wasn't home to get the rest, we should pause our joint accounts. He asked me not to call. He needed time. I sat at the dining table with the album still open, and stared at the frosting on my smiling face like it could explain what kind of person I had turned into. Work found out because secrets sweat, and office walls are thin. Hannah reported Evan to HR for violating their marriage. He confessed everything and threw me under the bus with the same quiet voice he used to flirt. It was mutual, he wrote in an email that somehow still felt like a shove. HR called me into a small glass room with a ficus and a box of tissues, and the woman from People Operations used a lot of gentle words that all amounted to the same thing. This is not a firing, but you should start looking. I got moved off the good accounts for optics. People stopped sitting next to me at lunch because nobody wants to be a witness if they don't have to be. At home, the silence filled the corners like fog. I slept on the couch because the bed felt like lying. I tried to call Mark twice and hung up before it rang. I wrote him a letter that read like homework. I'm sorry, I made a choice. I will do therapy. I will do anything. I left it on the console table in the lobby of his brother's building, because I didn't have the code to go up, and felt like some kind of exiled ghost. He didn't write back. His sister texted me once, he's safe, and I cried so hard I scared myself. Our friends split the way friends always do in these stories. Half of them sent me long paragraphs about how people make mistakes and marriage is hard. The other half sent Mark takeout, and told him I was never going to learn. Both sides were right in their own way. 2 months later, I got served. He filed for divorce quietly, no theatrical blame, just the facts. Irreconcilable differences. Date of marriage. Date of separation. Our officiant had said, "What God has joined, let no one separate." Turns out people can separate all by themselves if they try hard enough. We had a short marriage and no kids, so it was clean on paper. It did not feel clean in real life. I signed the documents with a hand that shook and a pen I'd gotten as a wedding favor at someone else's beautiful day. Evan moved to a different company in a different city. Hannah posted a photo a few months later with a caption about rebuilding. I wanted to hate her for setting fire to my life, but she didn't strike the match. I did. Mark didn't post at all. He disappeared from social media, the way people do when they're actually healing, not performing it. I heard through a mutual friend that he joined a climbing gym, and was learning how to make fresh pasta on Sunday nights with his brother. I pictured him laughing, flour on his shirt, and for the first time since Nashville, I felt something like relief for him that wasn't twisted up with the wish that he would pick me anyway. I tried therapy because doing nothing felt like insulting the damage. The therapist was small and kind and had a way of asking questions that made me stop trying to make myself look good. Why did you need that night to be special? What were you trying to prove? What part of you wanted to be wanted by someone who wasn't your partner? I told her the truth. I liked the version of me that men who didn't know me could create with a stare and a joke. I liked being the fun one more than I liked being the good one. I liked the risk because I thought if nothing had ever gone wrong before, nothing could. She did not tell me I was a monster. She told me that if I wanted to be different, I had to be bored sometimes and not mistake boredom for a broken heart. My parents were polite about the divorce in the way Midwestern parents are. My mother made a pot roast like she was cooking a cure. My father asked me if I had learned my lesson, like this was a parking ticket, not a life. I couldn't answer him without crying, so I didn't answer at all. I sent Mark an email 6 months after he left that only said, "I hope you're okay," and he replied the next day with, "I am." That single sentence wrecked me more than a novel would have. It also let me sleep for the first time in weeks. The worst day came on a random Tuesday when I ran into Mark on a sidewalk I didn't know we both still used. He was carrying a paper bag of oranges. I had a coffee and a new haircut I didn't like yet. We both froze. Then he nodded like you nod at a neighbor you used to know better. I said, "Hi," and he said, "Hi," and then I ruined it by saying, "I miss you," because honesty still comes out sideways for me. He looked down at the bag, then back up at me. "I miss what I thought we were," he said. He wasn't cruel. He wasn't kind. He was fair. He asked me how I was. I told him I was trying. He said he hoped I would keep trying. When he walked away, I watched him until he turned the corner because I wanted to memorize what a person looks like when they leave and mean it. If you're waiting for a twist where he comes back, there isn't one. He didn't. He rebuilt the kind of life that doesn't need my permission to be good. He became the man I married without the wife who couldn't stay true for one more month. That's how he won, I guess. Not with a revenge post or a big speech, but by refusing to carry the damage I made. He put it down and kept walking. I still work at the same company, in a different corner where the light is worse and the accounts are smaller. I eat lunch alone sometimes, and it's not the tragedy I once thought it was. I blocked Evan because there's no version of my future that needs his name in it. I unblocked Hannah's email not because I want to talk but because hiding from her doesn't make me less guilty. I stopped drinking at company events. I go upstairs when the voice in my head says, "Don't be the boring one." I try to be the boring one on purpose. It turns out boring is where the good choices live. It turns out boring is not the enemy. Secrets are. There are still nights when I dream about elevators. In the dream, I press 14 and nothing lights up. I press again and it stays dark. When I wake, I'm grateful for the kind of mercy that looks like a button not working. On the shelf by my bed, our wedding album gathers dust. I haven't thrown it away. It isn't a lie. It's a picture book about a day where the words I said deserved a different woman. I don't show it to anyone. I don't pull it out after wine. I let it sit there like a reminder that a life can tilt in a hallway if you're not careful. I used to tell myself I cheated because I was drunk, because I was stressed, because work trips make people stupid, because no one is perfect. Those statements are all weak in the same way. They center me as a person who had no power. The truth is painfully simple. I had power and I used it badly. Mark had power too and he used it well. He didn't set a fire to my life. He walked out of the smoke. He didn't humiliate me to our friends. He paused the joint account and learned how to make noodles by hand. He didn't ask for pity or revenge. He asked for peace, and then he built it. Sometimes I imagine a different Nashville. I go back to that bar and I order water. I laugh at the keynote and go up to my room alone. I send Mark a picture of my dumb badge and say, "Miss you," and I fall asleep to the sound of hotel air. That version of me doesn't exist, but I can make choices now that move toward her. When the next trip pops up on the calendar, I book a room alone. When the bar opens, I say goodnight. When someone's hand rests too long on my arm, I step back. Not because I'm scared of what I'll lose if I don't. Because I finally understand what I lost when I did.